SpongeBob SquarePants Mysteries, Ooze in the Ocean. Chapter 10. I was as surprised as my driving instructor and favorite teacher, Mrs. Puff, when I passed my boarding license exam. I mean, as surprised as she will be when I pass my exam. Someday, I imagine. Sure, I'm familiar with slug slime. Gary leaves it all over the house. But I've never seen glowing green slime from a slug. That was a new one on me. Still, I trusted Sandy's analysis. She was about as scientific as they came. If she said the ooze was slug ooze, that was good enough for me. Whoa! Patrick said slowly. So the gunk was left behind the rest home in Squilliam's house by a really lazy person. Sandy shook her head. No, not that kind of slug, Patrick. A sea slug. You know, the kind of critter that crawls along, leaving a trail of slime behind? You mean like Gary? Patrick asked. Why would Gary be sneaking around at night? He turned to SpongeBob. So I guess if you just remember to lock your door at night, everything will be fine. Case closed. No, not exactly, Sandy said. Gary's a snail. He's got a shell, but this here's slug slime. Slugs are kinda like snails, but they don't have shells. Besides, SpongeBob added, as of this morning, Gary was completely normal. His slime was not green, and it didn't glow. He paced around the lab thinking. So we're looking for a slug. That's gonna be tough. There must be a million slugs in the ocean. Ew, Patrick said. Gross. We live in the ocean. Sandy took another look at the printout from her analyzer and the notes from her experiments. True, there are a lot of slugs in the ocean, but with my scientific analysis, I believe I can narrow that down a little for y'all. SpongeBob stopped pacing. What do you mean, Sandy? The slug that left this ooze trail was no ordinary sea slug. According to these results, she explained, holding up her papers, it was a slug that has been mauled by... Kelpo? Patrick asked. Negative, replied Sandy. Fashion? Patrick asked again. No siree. Hot gossip? Atomic radiation, Sandy proclaimed. I knew it, Patrick exclaimed. I just have 3 questions. What's mutated? What's atomic? And what's radiation? Sandy pulled on an illustration of DNA, genetic material, wrapped in a twist. She pointed to the genes with a stick. Mutated means the slug has had its genes changed, which changes its body. It's a mutant. Atomic means something to do with atoms, and radiation is the powerful, dangerous energy that can come out of atoms. Patrick nodded, trying to look smart. Got it! Now just a few more questions. What are genes? What's a mutant? What are atoms? What is... Patrick! SpongeBob interrupted. It'll all make sense in time. For now, all we need to know is there's a dangerous mutant slug on the loose. We've got to find it, but how? Snapping her finger, Sandy said, I've got just the thing. She opened cabinets and searched through them. Dadgummit, where did I put that thing? She muttered to herself as she dug through scientific thingamabobs and doohickeys. Finally, in the last cabinet at the very back of the bottom shelf, she found what she was looking for. Aha! She held up a strange-looking device. It was a long tube with a handle. At the end, it flared open like a bell, like the bell of a horn. On the handle end were several switches, a display screen, and a trigger. Like all of Sandy's inventions, it appeared to have been fashioned out of branches, sticks, twigs, and nuts. Allow me to introduce you fellows to the Ooze Finder 3000. Invented it myself, she said proudly. If there's slime anywhere within half a mile, this baby'll sniff it out. Okay, SpongeBob said a little doubtfully. But thanks to Gary and all the other snails in Bikini Bottom, there's slime everywhere. That's why I want to make a few special adjustments, Sandy said. Fetch me that screwdriver over yonder, would you, SpongeBob? She pointed to a screwdriver hanging on the wall behind SpongeBob. He reached around, took it off its hook, and handed it to Sandy. Thank you kindly. Now let's see, she whispered to herself as she went to work, first removing a cover at the base of the handle and then changing the electronics. At one point, she lowered a welder's mask over her face, lit a blowtorch, and soldered new connections on the Ooze Finder's motherboard. Finally, she lifted the welder's mask, grinned, and said, "There! All done! She's an apple pie order." "I'd like to order an apple pie, please," Patrick said, still hungry. "With ice cream and a Krabby Patty. Make that 2 Krabby Patties." He turned to SpongeBob. "What do you have, partner?" SpongeBob picked up the Ooze Finder, marveling at its controls and readouts. "What did you do, Sandy?" "Simple," she said modestly. "I changed this from an Ooze Finder to a radioactive Ooze Finder. If there's radioactive ooze anywhere in Bikini Bottom, this'll lead you straight to it in a jiffy. Watch!" She took the radioactive Ooze Finder from SpongeBob and clicked on its main power switch. Vroom! It powered up with a low hum, and she squeezed the trigger. The apparatus swung around, pointing right toward the samples of ooze lying on the laboratory table. An alarm sounded. "Whoop! Whoop! Whoop!" "Sandy!" Patrick cried. "You found it! Radioactive slime!" "I know, Patrick," she said patiently. "That's a sample you took from behind William's house, remember?" "Oh yeah," Patrick said, embarrassed. "Here," she said. "You just press this button to stop the finder from going off around a particular ooze sample you've already found." She clicked a green button marked Stop Detecting, and the device went silent. "Your invention works great, Sandy," SpongeBob enthused. "I can't wait to try it out." Smiling, she handed the device back to SpongeBob. "Well, what are you all waiting for? Skedaddle, vamoose, go find the yellow-bellied bad egg that's been kicking up a ruckus and toss that desperado in the horse cow." "Thanks, Sandy," SpongeBob said appreciatively. "I have no idea what you just said, but we'll do our best." The 2 detectives wasted no time. First, they headed straight to the Shady Shoals rest home. Sandy's invention worked perfectly, immediately detecting the trail of green ooze. "Whoop! Whoop! Whoop!" SpongeBob pressed a button, telling the device not to follow that particular track anymore. While the 2 detectives were working outside, Merman Man and Barnacle Boy were in the home's cafeteria eating. "Say, Barnacle Boy!" "Yes?" His partner in crime fighting asked without looking up from the newspaper he was reading. "Does anything seem different to you?" "You mean the bread? Seems even drier than usual today." "No, I mean around here," Merman Man said, gesturing toward the room. "Quieter somehow." "That's because there aren't as many residents living here as there used to be." "Why not?" "They keep moving out," Barnacle Boy explained. "How come?" "They're worried about that mysterious green ooze outside, remember?" "Not really," Merman Man admitted. "See?" Barnacle Boy said, pointing toward the front door. "There's a couple of residents heading out right now." Merman Man craned his neck around and saw 2 elderly fish leaving. They were carrying bags and had a snail on a leash. "Come on, Zippity," the woman said to the snail. "We don't want you crawling through that nasty green goop. Let's go." "Meow," the snail said. "Oh dear," Merman Man said, watching them go. "This raises a very important question." "What's that?" Barnacle Boy asked. "Can we have their desserts?" Outside, SpongeBob and Patrick rushed back to Squilliam's house. They checked to see if the police were still there, but the officers were long gone. The radioactive ooze finder immediately sensed the trail of ooze behind the house. Whoop! 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 And SpongeBob pressed the stop detecting button again. "Now," SpongeBob said, satisfied with their work, "we're ready to find a new trail of radioactive ooze." "Hey, you know where we should look?" Patrick said, giggling. In the ooze paper! SpongeBob laughed. Good one! And he stopped. Wait a minute. I thought you didn't like puns, Patrick. I do when I make 'em, his partner explained. SpongeBob pressed the detect button. Staring at a screen on the handle, he said, "The finder says we should go this way." He trotted off in the direction indicated by the device. Patrick hurried after him. Ooze paper, he said to himself, snickering. Sandy's radioactive ooze finder led the private eyes through Bikini Bottom and all the way to the opposite edge of town. Suddenly, the wand jerked in SpongeBob's hand and pointed down to the ground. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Stay tuned for Chapter 11, coming up soon.